getting killed. As soon as it happened and we learned of the incident, we had several priorities. The first, of course, was to get the victim to the hospital and to get care as soon as possible. To the family, I'm so deeply sorry. There's nothing that I can say right now that's going to make you or your relatives or the friends of the victim feel any better. There were, I believe, 2 Minneapolis police officers that responded and were in the ambulance on the way to the hospital. The second was to get ICE off of the scene. There were dozens, if not hundreds, of ICE and federal officers that were there at the time. Having them there was only causing more chaos. Having them there was only making a difficult situation even more problematic, and one that, yes, they created themselves. There's little I can say, again, that'll make this situation better, but I do have a message for our community, for our city, and I have a message for ICE. To ICE, get the fuck out of Minneapolis. We do not want you here. Your stated reason for being in this city is to create some kind of safety, and you are doing exactly the opposite. People are being hurt. Families are being ripped apart. Long-term Minneapolis residents that have contributed so greatly to our city, to our culture, to our economy are being terrorized, and now somebody is dead. That's on you. And it's also on you to leave. It's on you to make sure that further damage, further loss of life and injury is not done. We're going to be working towards justice as quickly as we possibly can right now, and justice is what we've all got to get. Next, a message to our community. Look, we all know that the agenda of this Trump administration is to create chaos. Let us respond right now with our best versions of self. This is a moment where all of us in Minneapolis and beyond, we can rise to the occasion. We can show them who we are. We can show them the kind of courage, bravery, love, and compassion that makes Minneapolis, Minneapolis, and that makes America, America. We are better than a bunch of ICE agents being deployed to cities around the country and ripping apart families and communities. We're better than that. And so we are going to meet that hate with love. We are going to meet that despair with hope. We are going to meet that injustice with constitutional justice ourselves. And we're going to make sure that in this very difficult moment, we do not take the bait that these ICE agents are trying to create and that the federal government, to be clear, wants. They want us to respond in a way that creates a military occupation in our city. They want an excuse to come in and show the kind of force that will create more chaos and more despair. Let's not let them. Let's rise to this occasion. Let's show them something far more beautiful than the kind of division that they're trying to stoke. Let's show them unity of purpose, of love, and the courage of our conviction. Our conviction, to be clear, is rock solid, and it is for our neighbors, all of our neighbors. It's for people who have lived here for 80 years. It is for new immigrants who have made this city a better place. That's the kind of love that we're going to show up with right now. If you're angry, I get it. I am too. If you're feeling that kind of despair, it's understandable. Let's show them who we can be. Let's show up with peace. To march, to protest, to hug one another, to love all the way with peace. Do not give them what they want. finally, you know, we've got a lot of work that needs to happen right now to make sure that, first, of course, the scene was secured as much as possible, that we were able to get the victim, now deceased, to the hospital. We've got a lot of work to do in the coming days. I want to thank our city enterprise for the work that they have done, but more importantly, what they're about to do, because this is going to be heavy, and our city has been through a lot. We also know that we're prepared to do right for people. Among them is our chief of police. I'll invite him up.
My name is Brian O'Hara, B-R-I-A-N, O''H-A-R-A. I am the Minneapolis Police Chief. This morning, Minneapolis police officers received a report of federal law enforcement being involved in a deadly force incident, meaning shots had been fired. Minneapolis police officers responded to the scene. We arrived and found a woman with a gunshot wound to the head. Life-saving measures were performed at the scene, including CPR. The woman was transported to Hennepin County Medical Center, where she has since been pronounced deceased. The preliminary information that we have indicates that this woman was in her vehicle and was blocking the roadway on Portland Avenue, midway between 33rd Street and 34th Street in the city. At some point, a federal law enforcement officer approached her on foot, and the vehicle began to drive off. At least 2 shots were fired. The vehicle then crashed on the side of the roadway. Minneapolis police officers secured the crime scene and assisted in trying to preserve the evidence that is there. We have since turned over the scene both to the Federal Bureau of Investigation as well as the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, which will be conducting an investigation into this use of deadly force. I want to thank the mayor, city council president, other members of the city council, state legislators that were on the scene. This has been a very difficult time for everyone in the city. And this is obviously a very, very tragic situation where a woman has lost her life. That being said, in addition to this tragedy, which unfortunately we did predict, we were seriously concerned about further escalation from the scene. And I want to thank the elected officials that came themselves to help us prevent that from happening, as well as the individuals on that scene that remained peaceful and that abided by law enforcement instructions so that we could preserve that scene and ensure that a full and transparent investigation can take place. That being said, I just echo the mayor's comments that we ask that the community continue to call for peace. We understand people are going to be upset about what happened, and people are going to want to exercise their First Amendment rights. But please do so safely and lawfully to ensure that we do not have any further tragedy in this city or destruction. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Sheriff. Thank you, council members. Commissioner, I'll open it to questions.
Any idea on the identity of the ICE officer who fired those shots at this point?
I don't have that information, no. The question was, is there an identity of the ICE officer that fired? I do not have that.
Mayor, sorry, we're hearing the ICE officer stopped a physician from helping the lady who was shot. Is that true? We've seen videos all over social media that someone tried to help this lady, and they were told, they were pointing guns at and told to get away. Do you know about that at all?
So the question was, there's information out there that people tried to help the woman that was shot, and ICE officers then pointed guns at them and told them to leave. I do not have that information. I myself saw a video of the shots being fired as the car was driving away. What I can tell you is the narrative that this was just done in self-defense is a garbage narrative. That is not true. It has no truth. And it needs to be stated very clearly, since we have already seen a video of it. I do not know as to what you're talking about.
So, Mayor, she wasn't driving.
Over here.
She wasn't driving the car toward him, using her vehicle as a weapon.
That does not appear to be the case at all.
What's the city's protocol when an observer or an activist calls 911? We say an agent's following them or an agent's pointing a gun at them. How does the city of Minneapolis handle that situation before considering what happened?
Repeat it one more time. I missed the first part of what you said. And I'll turn it over to the chief, yeah.
What does the city do when someone calls 911 and a federal agent's
Oh, I see.
pointing a gun
Yeah.
at them? That sort of thing.
I'll turn it over to the chief. The question is, what does someone do when a federal agent is pointing a gun at them? Chief.
So, if I heard you correctly, the question is about when people call 911, what is the city's protocol in these situations? We've had a very dramatic increase in 911 calls related to this activity. We have a protocol in place that has been evolving as the situation has been changing. And at this time, there is a designated supervisor that is on duty 24/7 that fields those calls. And we do everything that we can to ensure that they are appropriately prioritized, with the priority being placed upon the protection of life and safety of everyone in the community.
Can you tell us any more about the woman who was fatally shot? Was she there as a legal observer, protester, bystander? What do you know that you can share?
So the question was, what can I share about the deceased? There is nothing to indicate that this woman was the target of any law enforcement investigation or activity. This woman was in her car, and it appears then blocking the street because of the presence of federal law enforcement, which is obviously something that has been happening, not just in Minneapolis, but around the country. She appears to be a middle-aged white woman.
Chief, just about a month ago, you said these unplanned and questionable tactics by federal agents would result in someone being killed at a press conference right here. Do you consider today's tactics in line with that, or do you just have a generic response to the fact that somebody is now dead?
The question is that I had previously made several statements about being concerned about the tactics being employed. I am obviously very concerned that I have been told that a woman who was sitting in her car blocking the street and not the target of any enforcement activity is now deceased. However, I do not know, to be clear, I do not know the exact circumstances of the shooting, but I would tell you, in any professional law enforcement agency in the country, I think they would tell you it's obviously very concerning whenever there's a shooting into a vehicle of someone who's not armed, but it also is something that is possible. At times, it is justified. But it is very concerning, and it's something that most law enforcement agencies in the country train very intensely to try and minimize the risk that law enforcement officers get placed into a situation that the need for deadly force would be necessary.
Has there been any indication of that need in this case?
I didn't hear the question, I'm sorry.
Has there been any indication of the need to shoot into the vehicle?
The question was, any indication about the need? I guess, getting back to the justification of this, I have not seen any information other than what I have
Was she
communicated.
alone in the car? Were the children in the car with her?
The question was if she was alone in the car. I know that I got there shortly after this call came in. I did not see anyone else with her while I was on the scene. However, I've since been told by our officers that have been with her the entire time that a spouse has arrived at the hospital.
Mayor, just curious if you're thinking about contacting federal authorities to register your concerns about this, personally making phone calls, et cetera.
Yes, we've been on the phone all morning. As soon as we learned about this, again, there were a series of priorities that we needed to go through. The first, of course, is to keep people safe and to help the victim in any way that we could. The second was to get ICE off of the scene. There was the notion that ICE agents would be necessary to create a perimeter around the scene itself. They themselves were creating the kind of dysfunction and chaos that they claim to be trying to help with. And so the message that we delivered very clearly was to make them leave. Now, beyond leaving the scene, they should also leave our city and our state. You know, we do work, our chief does work, our sheriff does work every single day to keep people safe in our city and in our state. And crime is dramatically down. Crime is down. It continues to trend down. They are doing the hard work of investigating, of arresting perpetrators of violent crime. What this federal administration is doing right now is not about creating safety. Do not let them tell you that what they are doing is about creating safety. It is not. It is having the opposite impact. We need to be clear-eyed about the work that is moving forward, and they need to leave Minneapolis.
We have time for one or two more questions.
Mayor, you may know this with your legal background. If the shooting is found to not be justified, does the city have any legal, or the state rather, have any legal recourse to bring charges against this ICE agent, given that this person is a federal agent, if the feds don't?
So obviously, and I have to always lead with this caveat because it is true, an investigation still does need to be conducted. I had my perception of what took place based on the vehicle and the vehicle's positioning. It does not appear that the individual is trying to ram anybody. Now, the question was, if it is in fact found to be an unjustified shooting, who issues the charge, who prosecutes, how does justice take place? I don't know the answer in full to that. This is obviously information that we're still working out. Chief, do you have any additional information, or Commissioner?
The only thing I would add to the mayor's statement is that the crime scene was held by the Minneapolis Police Department, and the investigation is now being led jointly by the Federal Bureau of Investigation as well as the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension. And the purpose of their involvement would be to investigate whether any state laws within the state of Minnesota have been violated.
One more
Can I
question.
just add something to that too? What's very important is that for our communities, that we do have some kind of part in this investigation. It needs to be done on a local level. With all due respect to the federal level, we do need to make sure that our local agencies are involved. Most certainly the BCA is very well capable of working with our federal partners in doing so. That is something that is needed for our communities, and so that's something that I can tell you that there's already been conversations from the U.S. Attorney's Office to the BCA that have already taken place today. How that's going to roll out, we don't know yet, but we are making sure that there is some kind of local entity, namely the BCA, that has a part in this investigation for the purposes of transparency and expedient transparency as to what happened today.
One more. If that's it.
So,
Thank you, everybody.
final again, thank you everybody for coming. Thank you to the media for being here and disseminating this very important information around this tragic incident. To reiterate a final message to our community members, I understand the anger. Let's unite around hope and love and peace and getting justice. That's what we need to be doing right now. I appreciate the service from everybody up here as well as the 435,000 people that call Minneapolis home. Thank you.
Got some housekeeping for you.
Now, breaking news from KARE 11.
Good afternoon. I'm Julie Nelson along with Chris Harapsky. We are cutting into programming as we continue following breaking news in Minneapolis, where an ICE agent shot and killed a woman this morning.
Yeah, the crowd of protesters as well as law enforcement has been growing ever since that happened about 9:30 this morning. This is happening near the intersection of 34th Street and Portland Avenue South. It's in South Minneapolis. Portland, a one-way street there. It's about halfway between 35W and Powderhorn Park. You know where that is. Now, we heard from Minneapolis leaders just a couple of hours ago, and we expect a news conference with the governor, Governor Tim Walz, in about the next half hour or so. We will bring that to you live when it begins. But right now, we're going to check in with Sammy Salina, who has the video that we've received or seen from social media that purports to show the shooting from the ICE agent to a woman in the car that we now know has been killed.
Yeah, that's right. We got this video and it appears to be taken by a witness. We decided to cut out most of the sound besides the gunshot. So here, I'll describe what the sound is. There is a lot of swearing. ICE officers are telling that person in the car to get out. Then that car backs up. You hear those shots coming from that man right there in the middle of the video, and then that vehicle crashes into another car. So we also are trying to turn around a video that shows the other side of the car where there appears to be 3 agents. We're trying to turn that around right now. And it looks like there's an agent that is physically trying to open the door of that red SUV. On the other side, that's happening as you see it. We're trying to turn around that other angle. Then that vehicle, as that officer is trying to open up that window, starts pulling away. Then you hear the shots. It appears to be at least 2, likely 3 shots, and then that car appears to lose control and crashes into that white vehicle. Now, we also found what appears to be the most updated version of DHS use of force policy. So I'll go ahead and describe what we found. So for fleeing subjects, deadly force shall not be used solely to prevent the escape of a fleeing subject. However, deadly force is authorized to prevent the escape of a fleeing vehicle where the law enforcement officer has a reasonable belief that the subject poses a significant threat of death or serious physical harm to the law enforcement officer or others, and such force is necessary to prevent escape. Deadly force shall not be used against a person whose actions are only a threat to themselves or property. This prohibition expressly does not apply if the person poses an imminent threat of death or serious physical injury to the officer or to another person. Now, the experts that we have been talking with, that you folks have been interviewing with, say that's the million-dollar question: was the officer's life in danger?
And Sammy, we should say that this is just one angle. The other angle that we recently found shows a scene, obviously has much more information involved. So we want to caution people not to be too quick to judge, because there are lots of different angles of this shooting, and there will be much more information coming to light in the days that to follow. We also want to point out that the ICE agents themselves are required to wear body cameras, so they will also have footage of this shooting. What we learned in the press conference tonight is that that woman does appear to have been the only person in the car, a 37-year-old woman who was shot twice in the head. She was taken to HCMC. We understand that is where she was pronounced dead, and that a spouse had arrived at the hospital earlier today to be with her. So no matter what side of the political aisle you are on, no matter what you feel about what played out on the streets today, a tragic day once again in Minneapolis with a 37-year-old woman shot and killed, and tensions high and fingers being pointed about who's responsible and ultimately what actually happened this morning around 9:30 a.m. at 34th and Portland. We appreciate you finding these videos for us and breaking them down. And just to reiterate, the reason we're not airing the audio until the gunshots, it's not to hide anything. It's just that there is a lot of swearing that we are trying to be cognizant of and not airing here on KARE 11. So, Sammy.
Thank you, Sammy, very much. Appreciate it. And while we're looking at that video, I just want to set up exactly what you're looking at and why. So we heard from various officials and from Max Nestorak, who was reporting the same thing, that ICE agents, a vehicle from an ICE agent was stuck in the snow in this area on Portland, which is a one-way street. and you had cars parked on both sides of the one-way, so you really only have one lane. People start blowing their whistles, which is what they do to say, hey, there's an ICE operation happening over here or there, and then people sort of swarm, like, you know, civilian investigators, right? They swarm and say, hey, there's an ICE operation happening here. This woman in the Honda Pilot there, that maroon-colored Pilot, drove up and blocked. So she parked perpendicularly to traffic, essentially boxing in the ICE agents' vehicles, is what we were told. And this is why you see the 3 federal agents right there walk up to that maroon-colored Pilot and say, hey, you're boxing in an investigation or an active investigation, whatever it may be, and they're trying to get her to move or get her out so they can arrest her. That's when the car takes off, goes to the right. There is an officer in the front left of the bumper there. The officer may have even been hit. We can't really see very well, but then 2 shots are fired, according to law enforcement. I just want to set the table. Sammy, thank you so much for bringing that in. I know you're going to keep going and seeing a lot of comments are coming in from across the aisle as well. We want to bring in Danny Spiewak now, our chief political reporter. It's fascinating how, darkly fascinating how a breaking news homicide like this.
Well, not a homicide, a shooting.
Well, it's a death.
Yeah.
Caused by another person, which is, I believe, it may not be purposeful.
Okay. I just want
Killing.
to make sure we're
How about
careful
that? We'll
with
go
our
killing.
words. Yeah.
Excuse me. This death has now become political, right? It seems like ideology and identity become a prism as to how you see evidence. And that's why we're being so careful to give everybody the evidence that we see. What are you seeing playing out now politically? Because I understand County Attorney Mary Moriarty has said that she's going to investigate this from the state level. But we also know the FBI is there investigating as well. So you have a lot of intersecting politically and with jurisdictions, et cetera.
Certainly, especially when it comes to the legal process, right? You could potentially have the county attorney's office telling us today in a statement really in the last hour that yes, they do have the jurisdiction to charge if they decide that state laws have been broken. Of course, that process has to play out, an investigation has to happen, but you could have a situation where a county attorney is looking at the same evidence and saying, we believe there was a law that was violated, and then of course you could have a federal investigation that says, no, there was no federal law that was violated, and it's still at this point even unclear how those two things would interact. So that's kind of the aspect of it moving forward, but I think you can't ignore the political implications around this and the background as to why was there a surge of ICE in the first place. You may remember back in June over the summer, Governor Wallace testified in front of Congress about what the Trump administration was calling sanctuary policies. Of course, Governor Wallace has said Minnesota isn't a sanctuary state. They just said that that's just not their job to enforce immigration law. But you've had this back and forth between the federal government and then the state and the city governments here with Minneapolis and St. Paul in particular, in the state of Minnesota. And so it's going to be very interesting to see what Governor Walz says here in about 15 minutes, freed from the constraints of a campaign.
Right.
We've seen what his mood has been like in the last couple of days.
Yeah, I find that interesting. And I don't know if you were able to watch the press conference with the mayor. Using all kinds of foul language. He was clearly upset. He was already saying, we know the DHS version of this is a lie. And to me, it just was, I feel like we've had stunning event here after stunning event after stunning event, and you've been front and center for all of them. I found the press conference a little stunning. Not that he was angry, I understand that, but it was a side of him that I found he was so quick to judge. He was so quick to say that he knew exactly what happened there this morning. What was your takeaway from that press conference? It surprised me a bit.
I think the biggest thing is that without being able to comment on the legal evidence that will be presented, this is something that will play out if it does play out and move forward into a court or if it's looked at by investigators. There are so many things that within the hours that this has happened, we just don't know. And so I don't want to speculate in terms of what do we know, what do we don't know. We're just trying to present the facts. But I will say I think it speaks to the animosity and the lack of trust between the local governments and the state government in Minnesota and the federal government. And I think that this has really become like a tipping point in many ways, that there is so much around all of this that's happened in the last year of the second Trump administration that I think you're seeing that play out, at the city level. And then I am sure, if President Trump comments today, we already saw, obviously, Secretary Noem you're going to see it from them as well, kind of an
exactly the same thing on the other
extension of what
side.
we've seen.
Yeah, saying things with certainty that we just don't know for certain yet. I think that's so well said. This is really just a microcosm of these very big issues and big emotions that have been playing out across the country. We do know that there's been a surge of ICE agents, the largest operation of ICE immigration in the country happening here in Minneapolis. And there has been a feeling, and the mayor also spoke of this, that, and so did the chief, we've been afraid something like this was going to happen, because not only have there been so many ICE agents here, but there's so much emotion around every stop they make. And there are a lot of protesters. There have been skirmishes between the two. But I think this is going to be a case where it's incredibly hard to separate the politics from the facts. What do you anticipate the governor doing? I think that's a great point. He's not running for re-election.
I think based on what we saw from Governor Walz yesterday, where he was very, very, very harshly critical toward the Republican Party and President Trump, I think you'll probably see that again today, just to be honest. I think that what you saw from Mayor Fry, you're probably going to see from Governor Walz, who has kind of positioned himself as a bulwark in Minnesota against the Trump administration. And of course, his constituency elected him twice, will not elect him a third time because he's not running. And so he feels like he's representing his electorate in Minnesota, and then the president feeling that he's representing his electorate that voted him into office. And so it is this very political clash that you're right, you can't remove the politics from any of this.
You're going to be covering the governor's press conference here at 2:15. What do you expect to hear from him? What do you think?
I think probably something similar to Mayor Fry. I don't know if it'll be quite the exact same thing. And obviously he's at the state level, so it's different. You know, the mayor, it's in his city. But I think you'll probably see some type of message saying that ICE isn't welcome here. It wouldn't be a surprise to see that based on the fact that he's, said that before.
Right,
and so
exactly.
I think that's probably fair to say.
Well, and we've been talking off camera about what does this mean now for the ICE operation in Minneapolis. We do know that in the immediate aftermath of the shooting, that the ICE agents did leave the scene, and the mayor was saying they wanted them to leave because, of course, their very presence can get people agitated. It can lead to, there had been ice being thrown at them, snowballs it seemed like that was escalating the situation. So they did leave the scene at 34th and Portland. I've been seeing people say on social media they cut and ran. Again, they probably did the responsible thing here, which is to help lower emotions by getting them off the scene. But we're not sure what this is going to mean for the overall ICE surge in operation here in Minneapolis.
100%. And we've seen it in this city, in this state before, what happens when a perceived injustice stews. And it got very ugly, obviously, after George Floyd, one of the costliest human-made disasters in this country's history. What's important, and I think, and you can back me up on this, you see it all the time. You see the spin in politics. And we see it right now. You have this, and this, I think, is our job to point this sort of thing out, because maybe we don't do it enough in journalism. But right now, immediately after this death happened, you had the Secretary of DHS saying that this is domestic terrorism, that person driving that Honda Pilot was domestic terrorism, which would mean she's trying to prove a point and committing violence in the process. It's harsh language. At the same time, you have Mayor Fry, who's using expletive language and saying that entire premise of keeping ICE officers safe is BS. And that may not necessarily be true. There's an officer standing in front of a car that's sort of driving at him. So it's very important that these facts go through the barrier of ideology and you see them with a clear lens before you react.
Well, we should mention right now they are taking down the barriers around the scene. I'm being told by our producer that things are starting to heat up a little bit in that area as they take down the barrier around the scene where that car did crash. So we're keeping an eye on that. We can take that full, maybe would be helpful. And we have our Joe
McCoy's down there right
on
now.
The scene. Joe, what are you seeing and hearing right now?
Well, Julie, just a few minutes ago, police started taking away those barriers that have been here since 11 a.m. And now there is a barrier of officers. These are State Patrol officers as well as MPD officers. Right now, the crowd is chanting, "ICE out now." I'm not exactly sure why police are making the decision to take down these barriers. The crowd is only continuing to grow throughout the afternoon. We've seen people here throwing ice and snow at some of the officers. One woman went in the street and was trying to block an MPD vehicle from driving away, and then she moved out of the street. But ever since a few minutes ago, they have started to take down these barriers. The crowd has only gotten louder and more agitated. People were trying to basically rip the caution tape that's surrounding the perimeter here and go into the street. So not sure exactly what is going to happen next here, but the barriers, as I mentioned, are being replaced by a barrier of State Patrol officers right now. And people keep chanting "ICE out now." They keep chanting for officers to arrest the shooter in this incident. But the crowd is only continuing to grow and doesn't show any signs of calming down anytime soon, Julie.
Thank you, Joe. Appreciate the report. If that chopper can zoom out a little bit, I want to be very, very clear to the people at home that this is not a massive citywide protest right now. This is one intersection with maybe a couple hundred people, 100, 200 people maybe in that area. But the language that we are hearing is getting a lot more divisive and a lot more frustrating towards law enforcement. They're asking them to go kick ICE out. They're asking them to go arrest ICE. They're asking them to go arrest the shooter. That's what they're saying in that little pocket right there. We also have Ian Russell, who has been covering this story all morning for us. He was on the ground first out there at Portland and 24th. Ian, can you hear me right now? Are you on with us? Oh, excuse me. Okay, I thought we had Ian Russell ready to rock.
And Chris, I want to correct myself. They're removing the barricades,
right,
not necessarily around the crime scene, but they had obviously cordoned off that intersection. You can't see right now where that car crashed, but they are opening up Portland, it looks like right now. That's Portland at 34th. And I think you do make a good point. That is a sizable crowd, a passionate crowd, but it is still remaining peaceful and mostly just chants at this point.
And what's so important, if I may, is the fact that it is a crime scene, right? They're not just protecting, they're not standing there for no reason. They have to protect the evidence in that area. There are gunshots that were fired, there's the car that crashed, there's all sorts of things happening in that area. So they not only have to do crowd control right now and try to keep people calm and relaxed, but they have to preserve that area, which is why we saw FBI agents out there, not even an hour after the shooting, taking measurements, taking photos, and doing what they do on death crime scenes.
So we know this will be a federal investigation. Mary Moriarty has made it clear. The BCA is also on the scene, so the state will be investigating as well, and Mary Moriarty may bring charges in Hennepin County if merited. So there are so many moving parts and different agencies involved in this because it was an ICE agent who was involved and the shooting was here in the city of Minneapolis. Again, if you're just joining us, a woman who's 37 years old was in a car and on Portland Avenue where there had been an ICE operation underway. She had moved her car to block the intersection. ICE agents approached the car and at some point fired into that vehicle, hitting her twice in the head. She was declared dead at HCMC, and you can see the crowd there at 34th and Portland reacting to that. And again, we do know ICE agents have been removed from that area. So right now that's local law enforcement you see on the ground. There's also 2 videos going around on social media, and we can authenticate at least one of them. I believe both of them now, right, Sammy? One came from Max Nestorak, a Minnesota Reformer reporter who got that directly from the witness and was first to post it online. So we can authenticate that it's real, and it shows exactly what Julie described. And more detail of the shooting was that a woman, they were trying to get inside the door of the car to get her out, but instead she put the car in reverse and then put the car in drive and drove. There were 2 other ICE officers in front of and to the left of that vehicle. You've seen the video. That is the, minuscule moment of time that matters so much right now. Let's listen. Okay, good. And let's listen in now. We spoke with Max earlier. Here's what he relayed to us from that witness.
And she said she was out on a walk in her neighborhood when she saw an ICE vehicle stuck in the snow. More ICE vehicles arrived, and bystanders started to blow their whistles in protest. We're seeing residents of Minneapolis on patrol watching for ICE activity, and so they sounded the alert in protest, which drew a bigger crowd. And that's when she said the driver of this Honda Pilot, the SUV, pulled up and parked perpendicular to on Portland Avenue, blocking the ICE vehicles. And from there, that's where the video starts, and we see officers approaching the driver's side door, telling the person to get out, the person trying to, hitting the gas, beginning to leave, and then the shots fired. What she saw was the driver had her window down, but then rolled it up as she was trying to follow orders to leave. I also asked if she had seen a immigration enforcement action taking place. Did they arrest anybody? Was anybody detained? She said no, there didn't appear to be a target in this operation.
The person you spoke with, the witness, said that the impetus of this entire situation was that an ICE vehicle was stuck in the snow?
That was my intention. That was my understanding, is that, you know, this ICE vehicle stuck in the snow. There's other vehicles that come up to support. And I think that's what we heard from a federal official. And then these neighborhood residents began to sound whistles,
right.
Drawing a bigger crowd. The other thing that, you know, there's just a lot of chaos afterwards, and of course you can see that from the video, but that ambulance and fire trucks struggled to get through because of the ICE vehicles in the road, so first responders had to walk around on foot to try to administer first aid.
And again, we know the woman did not survive, and we were told in a press conference earlier today that a spouse had arrived at HCMC.
Is this live right now?
And we understand that the situation is escalating at the scene now that police have taken down the barriers. Again, our understanding is there's no ICE agents there. This would be local law enforcement still on the scene.
Right. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Julie. I just wanted to know if this was happening as we speak or not. Okay, so this is not what we've been seeing. This is a complete escalation right now. You're seeing the snowballs, the ice balls. I said it earlier, I'll say it again. Ice balls and snowballs are not some innocent play fighting thing. That's like what caused the Boston Massacre. Like this is violence, right? You're seeing them chase officers out of the way. They are now walking / running away from the intersection as we speak. It appears that the growing crowd is pushing law enforcement out of the way, and they are leaving.
Trying to leave the scene. You know, it's important to reiterate that Chief Brian O'Hara has said many times they are not involved in ICE operations. Our local law enforcement is simply there in case there is danger to the public. In other words, the crowd starts to get rowdy. There starts to be an escalation between protesters and ICE officers. So they're there they are there only for crowd control. They are never there to assist ICE agents in their operation. So emotions are very high, though, today, no doubt.
Well, it's so important. If they're leaving right now and that scene is done, if that crime tape that no longer exists, and the cars that were there, the ones that were shot, still are there, and people are running it over, all that evidence is gone now. It's tainted.
We have no idea what is happening at that. You know, I don't know where those cars are in relation to where this video or this live picture is. You know, and we had said earlier there had been a lot of chanting, and there had been very, very little escalation going on in the crowd, except between a couple different people in the crowd. It hadn't been directed to law enforcement until this moment. And although you are not allowed to throw obstacles, no matter what they are, at officers, you know, our hope is that this is as violent, if that's too strong a word, that it gets today, that people can remain peaceful and certainly exercise their First Amendment rights. But
well, this is interesting, Julie, too, because there's officers behind the crowd. You see how there's like 100 or 200, and there's police cars in front and behind, almost as if they're giving them space. Or they're being chased out, I don't know.
Yeah, we'll continue watching this as the day goes on. And again, we did talk earlier with a use of force expert who emphasized how important it is to wait for all the facts to come out, and that he has a lot of experience in different cases across the country, and how often the narrative can change as more and more video and witness testimony is unveiled. I think we've already seen that on social media this morning. The first video that came out showed one angle. Videos that have come out subsequently show different angles and give us more information. And so no one knows exactly what went down at this moment. We do know a woman was shot and killed. It's a tragedy. We know tensions are high, and they have been. This operation in Minneapolis of ICE agents was the largest ever under Trump. They had sent 2,000 agents here, including about 600 Homeland Security investigators, in light of all the fraud tied to Medicaid that has been uncovered here in Minnesota. So already the situation was fraught politically and obviously emotionally as well. And now here today, what has happened is what we feared would happen, that this would escalate into a situation in which shots were fired, and tragically this morning a woman has lost her life. We are anticipating a press conference at any moment from Governor Tim Walz. We're joined by Danny Spiewak as well, our chief political reporter. Let's keep this live picture up as we talk to Danny and wait for that press conference. But Danny, I thought you made such a good point that in light of the governor's own press conference yesterday, in which he was more defensive and emotional than we've seen him in a long time, hard to know what to expect out of this press conference today, but we certainly know that there will be a lot of acrimony directed toward the president and his administration, or certainly it's what we anticipate.
And one thing that strikes me just watching this all unfold, you know, it's eerie that it's in, you know, a very similar neighborhood to the killing of George Floyd and that murder in 2020, of course, you know, in the Powderhorn neighborhood, South Minneapolis. It strikes me though that the dynamics are so different. That was a situation where you had Minneapolis police and you know, anger from the community toward the city's police department in the city of Minneapolis. In this case, you have an anger from people that are on scene towards a federal government with support from the city, and I'm guessing, you know, when Governor Walz talks, the state government. And so it's a different dynamic. The parallels will be drawn geographically. You know, obviously there's so much context around that here in Minneapolis, but
they do not have the support of local law enforcement.
Right, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying that it's a different dynamic because you were talking about, you know, criticism of actions by a local department. This is now a federal situation. The dynamics are much different in terms of the interactions between the federal, state, local governments, if that makes any sense.
Yes,
absolutely.
that's
what strikes me watching this right now.
Yeah, we had already heard the governor talking yesterday about how he felt that the president was attacking Minnesota and that he didn't have our best interests at heart. Of course, very political. We know that people feel very strongly the opposite way as well. But we all knew that the ICE operations here, whether you think they're merited or you don't, there's no doubt that tensions and emotions were rising every time they showed up somewhere to make an arrest. There would be large groups of people, and we had seen interactions between the crowds and ICE agents as well. You know, this surge, we're to understand from DHS and Secretary Noem, was because of the fraud that had been perpetrated throughout the state in Medicaid, largely from the Somali community. And it's interesting to note that they've said that they've arrested 1,300 people, but it's difficult for us to figure out if that is A, an accurate number, B, who these people are. They've said it would be the worst of the worst, but it's hard for us to confirm that, even when they give us names and they give us a criminal record. But that's going to be important context before the governor speaks. This is what it stems from, this particular surge in ICE agents. They're saying at the federal level they're coming here because of all the fraud in the Medicaid system, which is closely tied to many in the Somali community. And that set the stage for what we are seeing today as far as why they were coming specifically to Minneapolis in the last 2 days.
But it's very difficult because we don't know what the purpose of today's operation was.
Correct.
And so we don't know why they were in that area of South Minneapolis. We don't know, you know, when it comes to the fraud issue, of course, you know, that was cited as a reason to boost enforcement. We know that much of the fraud defendants who were Somali American were U.S. citizens or were here legally. And so there's so much at play here. It's so difficult to get information in real time. And so, you know, there's a lot going on, I guess, to keep it, you know, to keep it short.
A lot of layers, and we want to point out too, the woman that was in that car was not the target of the ICE operation this morning. She showed up, according to the witness that shot that video. Max said the woman in the car, this witness heard the woman in the car yelling things at ICE like "get out." So she was one of those observers that we've seen show up in communities when ICE operations are in effect, but she was not the subject of the ICE operation.
So I just ask, what happens next, right? We have this horrific death. You can ascertain who's at fault there, and that'll be litigated, I'm sure. But you have thousands of federal agents conducting immigration raids in the Twin Cities right now. And there's a choice. Do you continue to conduct these raids Do you have warrants? Do you continue to follow the mission and the purpose that President Trump has ran on and was elected on? Or do you heed the warning from the mayor and others and let things cool off and get out of Dodge?
Yeah, that'll be interesting. We haven't heard anything. We did get a statement from Secretary Noem this morning about the shooting. She's in Texas now. She was here yesterday, but no word yet on whether or not they're going to stand down on this operation here in Minneapolis.
Do we have the statement from Majority Whip Tom Emmer? Because we've been hearing from a lot of local elected Democrats, but I would love to hear what Emmer had to say this morning. Okay, 1 second. And Sammy, I don't know if you want to read that.
Yeah, sure. So Tom Emmer on X said, "Our brave ICE agents put their lives on the line every day to protect our communities from dangerous criminals. May God bless and protect them in their efforts. Shame on the elected officials who endanger these agents by spewing lies and hateful rhetoric." We also got some updates. There it is over there on the screen. We also got a recent update from Hennepin County Sheriff who said that their office was not involved in the shooting, nor were they on scene when it happened. Our deputies did respond to preserve the crime scene. We also have some updated statements from Senate Majority Leader Aaron Murphy and House DFL Leader Zach Stevenson. Leader Murphy says she's devastated and furious. A weak president sent ICE agents to Minnesota to sow chaos without regard for human life, and today's killing is the predictable outcome. Leader Stevenson said a woman was shot and killed today by an ICE officer. We're monitoring the situation and gathering the facts, but we know this is yet another dark day for Minnesota as the federal government continues to target our state. So plenty of reaction here.
Two things in there we know to be factually true. It is another dark day in Minnesota, regardless of how this all plays out. And also that a woman was shot and killed in Minneapolis this morning, and we have to try, all of us, to remember that and maintain some of our civility and humanity, hopefully, as this plays out. So you can see there are two very strong narratives, each side. And I do think this is politically a relatively recent development, that parties at that level and officials at that level come out and say things with such certainty instead of just coming out and saying, let's let this play out, everyone stay calm, we don't have all the facts yet. I feel like we have turned a corner politically where people are ready to kind of stake out their side and do so very publicly and forcefully very quickly after incidents like this unfold. We certainly knew that happened with Mayor Jacob Fry this morning. He has a very clear point of view on what happened this morning. Let's listen in to what he had to say earlier today. We're looking for the sound from Mayor Jacob Fry.
And I have a message for ICE. To ICE, get the fuck out of Minneapolis. We do not want you here. Your stated reason for being in this city is to create some kind of safety, and you are doing exactly the opposite. People are being hurt. Families are being ripped apart. Long-term Minneapolis residents that have contributed so greatly to our city, to our culture, to our economy are being terrorized, and now somebody is dead. That's on you. And it's also on you to leave. It's on you to make sure that further damage, further loss of life and injury is not done.
And so that's Mayor Jacob Fry of Minneapolis with condemning words for the ICE agents and for the federal government as to the mission of those ICE agents. So that's one side that you were talking about, Julie. This keeps reminding me of like a football play, right? And a ref throws a flag. But we're not playing football. This is life and death right here. But you see the truth based on what team you live near, right? The Vikings play the Packers. It's a terrible analogy, but this is how it's playing out, where not even an hour and a half after an incident, you have polar opposites politically telling you what happened in different ways.
Well, speaking of that, let's hear from Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security, Kristi Noem, speaking this morning on the shooting from Texas.
You asked about a shooting that we just had in Minneapolis, Minnesota. It was an act of domestic terrorism. What happened, it was our ICE officers were out in an enforcement action. They got stuck in the snow because of the adverse weather that is in Minneapolis. They were attempting to push out their vehicle, and a woman attacked them and those surrounding them and attempted to run them over and ram them with her vehicle. An officer of ours acted quickly and defensively shot to protect himself and the people around him. And my understanding is that she was hit and is deceased. We're continuing to gather more information, but this goes to show the assaults that our ICE officers and our law enforcement are under every single day. These vehicle rammings are domestic acts of terrorism. We're working with the Department of Justice to prosecute them as such. We will continue to protect our ICE officers and in cooperation with other law enforcement agencies as well.
All right, so those are the two very clear sides being drawn right now. Police Chief Brian O'Hara also spoke this morning, and he maintained a little more of a middle-of-the-road stance and is, of course, asking everyone to remain calm while this plays out. Let's listen into what he had to say.
This has been a very difficult time for everyone in the city. And this is obviously a very, very tragic situation where a woman has lost her life. That being said, in addition to this tragedy, which unfortunately we did predict, we were seriously concerned about further escalation from the scene. And I want to thank the elected officials that came themselves to help us prevent that from happening, as well as the individuals on that scene that remained peaceful and that abided by law enforcement instructions so that we could preserve that scene and ensure that a full and transparent investigation can take place.
Well, and everyone had remained calm. We were seeing it escalate a little bit as the barricades were being taken down. We're keeping an eye on that situation near 34th and Portland. So far, it's been mostly calm at the scene. We are waiting in just a couple minutes for Governor Walz to start his press conference. He'll be speaking about the shooting this morning as well.
Yeah, politically, I mean, where do you go from here? It has now come down to an act of extreme violence, and it depends sort of how you see the evidence as to whether it was justified or not. But what are the ramifications for this down the road? Because I think you were right, you called this perhaps a tipping point. And it's something that the chief had been warning about and talking about for months now, of one, having a lack of transparency with local law enforcement, so they don't know what federal agents are doing, when and where and why, right? And then you have that lack of transparency with the civilians. Doesn't mean that they're not going after potentially dangerous people, but with that lack of transparency creates chaos.
Yeah, and I think what you see now is you are going to see the two camps, kind of sticking to what we've heard. But I think one thing that strikes me as well is that there's a recency bias in terms of thinking that this is all kind of coming out of nowhere, or even in the last several months, or even just during the second Trump administration of the last year. But going back to 2018, we covered large protests here in Minneapolis downtown the summer of 2018 during Trump's first term related to ICE. There was the slogan "Abolish ICE" that came from many of the progressive members of the the Democratic Party and activists and protesters and that sort of thing. So this has been festering for a while. The immigration issue was a huge part of the 2024 election. The campaign, of course, for both candidates, Republicans and Democrats. And so I think it just will continue to be a political story. But I also don't want to make this into politics right now because, Julie and Chris, as you've mentioned, somebody lost their life today.
Yeah.
There will be a legal process that plays out to determine if this was justified use of force or not. And so it's a very political story in a sense, but it also is a human tragedy, no matter what the facts show at the end of the day. And so you want to try to separate those, but the political aspect is part of all of this.
Absolutely,
and you can't
underlying
ignore it.
everything. Well said, Danny. We appreciate that. Our Gordon Severson is on the scene, and we are being told, we saw the barricades being removed. We understand now that the scene of the shooting has also been cleared. Let's go to Gordon. Looks relatively quiet there right now, Gordon.
Yeah, the police have pulled out, the barricades have been removed, and everyone has kind of moved down the street closer to where this all happened. You might be able to see there's some flowers, other tributes here. The crowd is now smaller than it once was. It's now between 100 and 200, where it was, hundreds before. No law enforcement presence here, whatsoever. People are now gathering around the spot of where this all happened to, pay tribute and pay respects to what happened. And, a very different different feeling, a very different mood here, quiet, more of somber and remembrance, where before it was a lot more about, frustration and anger towards what happened.
Gordy, we're going to get to a press conference in 1 minute, but I have to ask you a question. We saw video from the helicopter looking down of a large group of people chasing away law enforcement. What happened there at the scene at that time? Did they tow away the vehicles, or what was going on where you are?
That was further down from where we were located, so I didn't, see what was happening there. It might have been part of, the general commotion of moving all of these vehicles out, moving all the barricades out. Anytime, that there was movement with law enforcement that, got a reaction from the crowd. So I think pulling out that many cars, that many officers, and all of the barricades may have been the reason for that happening.
And what are you hearing? Overall, you've been there for hours now. What's your assessment of the situation, the conversations, the emotion level?
Well, I think it's, a lot of, anger. This is something that I think that, has been bubbling up in this, community for a while. People, a lot of in this neighborhood not, wanting ICE here. And then when this word broke out this, morning, there was a few people here right away, but we saw the crowd grow throughout the day as more and more people became aware of this situation. You saw that there were city leaders, pretty much every member of the Minneapolis City Council was out here, pretty much kind of a Rolodex, if you will, of community leaders here in Minneapolis, elected officials, all coming down here to try to figure out what's going on. And I think at first people were trying to kind of a wait and see, trying to see what happened, but then as the day went on and more information got out, I think the crowd got a little more angry, more agitated. But so far, we've been seeing a peaceful protest here on the street.
Yeah. Gordon Severson, thank you. We appreciate you standing by and reporting clearly for us on just unfortunate, tragic, and wild 4 hours again in the city of Minneapolis. And any moment now, we are waiting for a news conference from Governor Tim Walz. As soon as he walks up to that podium and that microphone, we're going to go hot and listen to what he has to say. Danny, you were talking about how, what he might say next is perhaps so much different than what he may have said if he didn't drop out of the race. I mean, now when you take the political shade off, when you take the consequences of what you're going to say and tie it to an election, I don't know, it's kind of a roll of the dice of what's going to happen here, given the violence we saw this morning and whom you believe is responsible for it.
I think the tone will probably be similar to what it was yesterday, but I actually think that really since he lost the election with Vice President Harris and he was the presidential nominee, they lost and he came back as governor. His tone changed in many ways because President Trump was in office, and since then his tone has been much different, of course, even than when Walz was in his first term and President Trump was the president, because they had these clashes, of course, on the national campaign. And so, really for the last year, we've seen Governor Walz presenting Minnesota as almost like a safeguard against the federal government for his electorate, for the people that voted for him. I understand it's very complicated political dynamics, but that's
also the VP candidate is often the attack dog. They're the ones sent out to really attack the opponent. And that was a role that we hadn't seen as much with the governor until he took on the vice presidential candidacy. And then we saw a different side of him, and I agree with you that maybe didn't really go away. I think he saw that gained traction with a lot of Democrats and thought that was the way he was going to go. And for a while there, he was also trying to maintain a presence on the national stage, right when he got back from being VP. And so you saw more and more of that. But yesterday, it was pretty stunning, too. There was so much emotion, you could tell. Obviously, this is a man that's been under a lot of stress and has been dealing with a lot. And almost it felt like I don't want to say mask, that's not the right word, but it came off and he was just authentically angry, upset yesterday. So you can only imagine what the tone will be today. Hopefully for the people of Minnesota, we can all try to check our emotions a little bit and cool off and let this play out without resorting to anything ugly.
We also have to talk about the timeline of what's happening here. This has something to do with the shooting this morning directly. But you'll see it on social media. People are saying, where have you been, media? There's all this fraud happening in Minnesota. And I like to point out to people that, well, yeah, KARE 11 and our investigators helped uncover a bunch of this fraud. We've been actively pursuing it through really good journalism for like years now. And there have been charges, federal charges and indictments that have happened because of it. We're trying, we're on it. And then this YouTube video goes viral, alleging a lot of fraud, but not crossing the T's and dotting the I's. So we're not saying fraud exists or not, but it was amateur journalism at best, right? And then you have this focused attention, then the federal government says, we're gonna send 2,000, 1,600 more agents there to clean this up, because you don't have a handle on it. And now we have this. So I just wanna always reiterate the facts, and especially the timeline of how this has happened, and how it feels different for us sitting here in Minneapolis than it may feel from someone who doesn't live here and seeing just the national headlines.
Certainly the attention on the fraud nationally in the last 6 to 8 weeks has of course put it in the limelight. As you mentioned, in Minnesota, whether it's our station, whether it's others, Feeding Our Future was a campaign issue in 2024 for the GOP, or 2022 for the GOP nominee Scott Jensen. He brought up Feeding Our Future. Governor Walz answered to his response. It was part of the campaign. It would have been part of the campaign, of course, again, moving forward if he had stayed in the race in 2026. But it's just, you're right, there is a lot of attention on that. That is why there was the surge. There's a lot of interaction between the attention on fraud and the surge in ICE. But again, to caution, we don't know the purpose of today's operation. So, ICE, of course, operated before the second Trump administration. ICE, I guess the point I'm making is we don't know the purpose of why they were here, the events that led up to the shooting.
Right.
So while the bigger picture shows, all of these things dating back, 6 to 8 weeks, and then, with the national attention on the fraud and then everything before that, the here and right now, we just don't quite know yet. And I think that it's very important to let the investigation play out so that we understand what happened today.
Right.
Yeah, violence from here would solve absolutely nothing in any way, shape, or form.
Well, it's interesting when you scroll through social media, and there are lots of videos that are coming out now, and it just, the division, and I know social media is not the real world, but there's definitely going to be a lot of that coming out in the next few days. Depending on which side of the political aisle you're on, you might see this differently. We just want to make sure that we're trying to maintain our objectivity and understand that nobody, even if you've seen 3 videos at home, none of us really know what played out and exactly what happened at 9:30 this morning at 34th and Portland. So we are going to reserve judgment, and we're going to wait until we get more information. Governor Walz will be giving a press conference here shortly. It looks like that crowd that had seemed a bit unruly is now just calmly walking down the street. I'm sure that in the coming days there will be lots of people wanting to exercise their First Amendment rights, whether it's for an anti-ICE protest or a pro-ICE protest. And the concern has shifted somewhat from this being people almost anti-law enforcement to maybe neighbor versus neighbor who have very different political views. And
they're chasing a car there now.
Yeah. And this is going to be something that hopefully we can respect each other's differences in opinion and let this all play out.
We're not sure we're going to hear from Governor Walz here in about 30 seconds, but we hope the message is calming. Here he comes.
Good afternoon. Today I'm joined by Department of Public Safety Commissioner Bob Jacobson, Colonel Schaefer of the Minnesota National Guard, and Colonel Bogojevic of the Minnesota State Patrol. This morning we learned that an ICE officer shot and killed someone in Minneapolis. My deepest condolences to the family, to the loved ones who had to learn about this tragic event on national television. We've been warning for weeks that the Trump administration's dangerous, sensationalized operations are a threat to our public safety, that someone was going to get hurt. Just yesterday, I said exactly that. What we're seeing is the consequences of governance designed to generate fear, headlines, and conflict. It's governing by reality TV, and today that recklessness cost someone their life. I've reached out to Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem, and I'm waiting to hear back. Let me be clear, Donald Trump and his administration may not care much about Minnesota. That's been pretty evident, but we love this state. We won't let them tear us apart. We'll not turn against each other. To Minnesotans, I say this: I feel your anger. I'm angry. They want a show. We can't give it to them. We cannot. If you protest and express your First Amendment rights, please do so peacefully as you always do. We can't give them what they want. The hearts and minds of the people in this state are on our side. To Americans, I ask you this, please stand with Minneapolis. To Minnesotans, know that our administration is going to stop at nothing to seek accountability and justice. The State Bureau of Criminal Apprehension are working on the investigation. We have activated the State Emergency Operations Center. State Patrol and Minnesota National Guard leadership is connected with the Minneapolis Police Department, the St. Paul Police Department, Hennepin County Sheriff's Office, the DNR, and Minnesota's Homeland Security and Emergency Management. We have activated dozens of members of the State Patrol's mobile response team. And from here on, I have a very simple message. We do not need any further help from the federal government. To Donald Trump and Kristi Noem, you've done enough. There's nothing more important than Minnesotan safety. I've issued a warning order to prepare the Minnesota National Guard. We have soldiers in training and prepared to be deployed if necessary. I remind you, a warning order is a heads up for folks. And these National Guard troops are our National Guard troops. They're teachers in your community, they're business owners, they're construction professionals. They are Minnesotans. Minnesota will not allow our community to be used as a prop in a national political fight. We will not take the bait. We will continue to update you, Minnesota, as we get more information. Now I'd like to turn it over to Commissioner Bob Jacobson of the Minnesota Department of Public Safety.
Thank you, Governor. As the Governor mentioned, my name is Bob Jacobson. It is my honor to serve as the Commissioner of the Minnesota Department of Public Safety. First of all, I want to acknowledge the reason that we are all here. The loss of life is not anything anyone would ever want. We fully expect that the community will want to peacefully demonstrate their anger or frustration. Minnesota residents and visitors have the right to peacefully demonstrate. We recognize that demonstrations are often driven by strong emotions, beliefs, and certainly a desire to be heard. Our role is to help ensure everyone can express themselves without anyone getting hurt. The Minnesota Department of Public Safety's role through the Minnesota State Patrol is to ensure safety, protect constitutional rights, keep roads accessible, and above all, to prevent harm. Our top priority is public safety. Our focus is keeping demonstrators, community members, drivers, and law enforcement safe, especially during moments of heightened tension or uncertainty. Demonstrations must remain safe and lawful, particularly around roadways. We will join with our partners to support safety while respecting the right to protest. With that in mind, I'd like to share a few safe and lawful ways to demonstrate. Minnesotans can safely and legally express their views in many ways, including getting together peacefully with others in public spaces, marching or walking, not on roadways, making your voice heard through chants, speeches, and displaying signs, being present in public areas where pedestrians are allowed, gathering in designated or permitted areas, and these actions will allow people to express themselves while protecting the safety of everyone involved. Unsafe or illegal actions could result in fines or arrests. Certain behaviors create serious hazards that threaten public safety, disrupt emergency services, or put people at risk. These actions could result in fines or arrest. Demonstrating on or entering a freeway on foot, walking on highways, throwing objects, starting or setting fires, damaging property or graffiti, using illegal fireworks, displaying or using illegal weapons, reckless or dangerous driving, especially near pedestrians, and certainly assaultive, aggressive, or riotous behavior toward anyone. We all want definitive answers to what happened today. Our Bureau of Criminal Apprehension is working in conjunction with the FBI to investigate this morning's shooting. As you know, we don't comment on active investigations, but also keep in mind that this is an investigation is also in its infancy. So any speculation about what had happened would be just that. And we will not engage in speculation. With that, I will turn it back over to the governor. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. We'd be glad to take any questions. Yeah, and I can let General Schaefer talk about this. It so happens it's a training weekend. We've got about 7,500 troops in training at our sites, training sites across the state. What it is, and in the National Guard, you give a warning order, which is a heads up of something could be coming. That just allows people to think about what they would need, what it would mean to mobilize, what it would mean to put them in. And I could let the general talk a little bit about this. Obviously, since the summer of 2020, we had a lot of work done on teams being ready to make sure that civil unrest. And what that means, and I think Commissioner Jacobson was very clear, and I want Minnesotans to hear this from me. The desire to get out and protest and to speak up to this administration of how wrong this is, that is a patriotic duty at this point in time, but it needs to be done safely. And I think the commissioner simply just laid out some of those parameters. We can do that. This is the peaceful resistance that we need. Simon, you want to say a few things about what that means to have them on the ready?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Governor. So for the military, Minnesota National Guard is comprised of 13,000 soldiers and airmen. We live all across and work throughout Minnesota. A warning order is just an initial step to increase your preparations. The Minnesota Guard is always prepared to respond and support state agencies and the citizens of Minnesota. So what that means for us today is just some additional checks on equipment that is ready at all times, and maybe some additional phone calls to service members who might be activated, but no activations. We are embedded with our state agencies here at the Operations Center to just continue parallel planning in the event that we are needed to support.
Thanks, General. And I would make note, Mary, and to Minnesotans on this about the National Guard, they're there to protect you and protect your constitutional rights. These are our neighbors. They don't wear masks. They don't bust in from somewhere else. They're not here to cause hassles to you or what we saw today, the tragedy. Having them at the ready to make sure, because when we see these types of things happen, and we saw it after the murder of George Floyd, there's folks that want to cause chaos. There's the disruptors in it. And while the vast majority of those protests were peaceful expressions of their First Amendment rights, there were those that destroyed property and put people at risk. The National Guard is there to make sure that peaceful protests are able to be done, and that those that want to do the destruction are stopped from doing that. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, and I think apparently by a federal agent, not by Minnesotans who were there to express their First Amendment rights. I think we've seen this to have folks ready. The gatherings that were down there today, I think this shocked everyone. People showed up as they should. There's people putting flowers down on a memorial. There's people expressing their anger. It's just as these situations develop, we decide when we need to move these people out. And I think the local reporters know well on this. Both unfortunately and for us, the upside of this is that we're very good and we've had practice at this. And I just want to, again, implore Minnesotans, I am not telling you not to express your anger or your frustrations or the outrage that we have. Look, this was totally predictable, as I said it yesterday, and it was totally avoidable. And I just want to remind you, too, that local law enforcement, we get no coordination. They don't tell us they're coming. They don't say why they're sending the largest deployment in American history to Minneapolis. They're not making us any safer. We don't have any of that coordination. They should be talking to us when we do these things. Let us know. We're going to be down here. This is going to happen. We don't have that. So when you see local law enforcement or state patrol, or if it would take the National Guard, we're there responding to the chaos they've created too, but our role is to make sure that we're protecting Minnesotans so that something like this doesn't happen. I have not. The question was, have I spoken to the individual's family? No, we do not have a definitive ID on this individual. And look, I'm going to note to all of you, I think it's really important, and the professionals do this, and they train me to do this. This is an open investigation. You need to be very careful about it. I know that many of you, myself included, have seen a very difficult video to watch, one where there's a family member watched their family member be shot and killed in front of them. It's beyond me that apparently from the federal government, from the Homeland Security Director herself, has already determined who this person was, what their motive was, and they hadn't even been taken out of the vehicle. We're not living in a normal world. And so, no, I have not. And I want to be very careful because I know how painful this is. I know how painful it is right now. I'm saying person and all that. This is a human being. This very well is an individual's child, a parent, and we don't know that yet. So, no, I have not, but once we do, we will. So, yes. Colonel, would you like to do that? Colonel?
So the question was, how many State Patrol troopers have been deployed to the city of Minneapolis? Right now, we don't talk typical numbers because that is considered security information. We do have a specialized team that does deal with crowd control, and so they have been deployed. But again, they are from all over the state of Minnesota, so they will come in tiers to the state. No, it was in response to this event.
I'm sorry, what was it? Well, I said this yesterday. We've never been at war with our federal government. I think in this case that the National Guard is their main mission. They have a dual mission. There's the federal mission when they're under Title 10 orders, and then they're under Title 32 orders. In this warning order, there's nothing officially been done yet. If I am to activate them as the Commander-in-Chief of the Minnesota National Guard, I will issue the executive order to the Minnesota National Guard, and then they will be put in state duty status. And as you've seen over the last few years, that could be flood prevention, that could be after a wind-blowing storm up in the north, up in Bemidji, or it could be COVID or George Floyd response. In this case, again, it doesn't necessarily change the mission. They're there to protect Minnesotans. They're there to serve Minnesotans. I think the thing that is so challenging in the moment we're in is we don't see a desire to work with us on public safety. We hear a demonization of our state. We see people coming in who don't know our community, and we see this massive display for the TVs that we're trying to understand how is this coordinated. And some of you watch the videos on there, total chaos. And look, I have very limited work in this is the training in the National Guard, but I've had a lot of training now to watch how our professionals operate. After this person was shot, federal agents milling around, touching the vehicle at a crime scene and things, I don't know what to tell you. And I don't quite know how to respond to the question other than my primary responsibility as governor is the protection of the people of Minnesota. And you can be assured whether it's the State Patrol or whether it's the National Guard, their deployment is there to protect Minnesotans from whatever it is. If it's an act of nature, if it's a global pandemic, or in this case, if it is a rogue federal agent. I don't know at this time, and I want to be very careful. It's unprecedented that we have the federal government's already determined exactly what's happened here and the motives of an individual that we don't even know the name. They don't know the name, and that's very difficult. So, well, one more, Dana. Dana. Look, and I understand the uniqueness of this moment in this week, following this week, seeing what's happening in the backdrop of a show hearing in D.C. My job is to govern, and my job is to see what the facts are. this happened a couple of hours ago, and we're already pitting American against American. All of you saw a video in your eyes. We have a chaotic situation caused by the largest deployment in American history of federal agents into a community with no communication to locals. We had a chaotic situation where an individual is in their car shot and killed. And so, look, I want to be very cautious here, because Donald Trump will make this about me. He will make this about politics. This is about public safety, and this is about normalcy. To Americans who are watching this, if you're in Portland or you're in LA or you're in Chicago or you're wherever they're coming next, stand with us. Stand with us against this. This was so preventable, so unnecessary, and I don't know, I hope, maybe we're at the McCarthy moment. Do you have no decency? Do you have no decency? We have someone dead in their car for no reason whatsoever, and I don't want to be right about this, but I said if they do this, they're going to create a chaotic situation where someone innocent's going to get killed. And they did it. And now we hear more political rhetoric. Enough. Enough is enough. And so to Minnesotans, don't take the bait. Do not take the bait. Do not allow them to deploy federal troops into here. Do not allow them to invoke the Insurrection Act. Do not allow them to declare martial law. Do not allow them to lie about the security and the decency of this state. And let's let this investigation play itself out. Let's make sure we protect our neighbors. I encourage you to use your First Amendment rights and all of your constitutional rights, but do so in a peaceful manner. We'll gather back with you as soon as we gather more information that needs to be put out. But again, stay safe, Minnesotans, and we'll be back with you.
Listening in on Governor Tim Walz talking about the shooting today at Portland and 31st, where a 37-year-old woman was shot and killed by an ICE agent. A somber tone that he took, sending the message that he believes this was all preventable, and he's upset that ICE was even in Minneapolis. We're going to hear a lot of that kind of rhetoric coming out in the next few days. But Danny, a decidedly somber governor, unlike the mayor of Minneapolis, who was fiery and using profane language. The governor decided to take a totally different tone.
Yeah, I thought the tone was different, but the message was very much the same. And I thought the message was similar to, as he mentioned, what he was talking about yesterday in his press conference, where again, he's positioning Minnesota as almost sort of a safe zone against the federal government, which he has called hostile, in words such as that. And so yes, his tone was very much, talking about letting the facts play out. But was not a surprise in terms of his view towards the federal government's action.
And a couple pieces of news that we did learn: the State Patrol mobile unit has been activated. They're coming in from around the state just to make sure things stay safe. The National Guard is on standby, preparing if necessary. Of course, the governor saying, please go out and exercise your First Amendment rights. But remember that these National Guard troop members are Minnesotans, and they're just here to keep everybody safe, and certainly hoping that everyone who does decide to protest does so peacefully.
What's also important is he was saying and suggesting that this was planned by the Trump administration. He said, don't take the bait. So it's his interpretation that the president and the federal government right now is trying to instigate something like this. That's what the governor just said.
Yeah, and I think something important for people to understand, if you heard a lot about the National Guard in the news, typically the state activates the National Guard. And so Minnesota, like they did in 2020, has the authority to activate Minnesota National Guard troops. The issue with the federal government that was in the news for so many months was the Trump administration seeking to mobilize National Guard units from certain states into places such as Chicago or Los Angeles in the state of California. And so that's the issue. And of course, they sort of dropped that attempt here as it went through the courts. But that's when he's talking about the National Guard, I think people need to understand that the governor has the jurisdiction, but then there's that issue with the federal government as well.
All right, Danny, we so appreciate your insights this afternoon. We'll cut you loose so you can go do some more reporting for our early shows tonight.
Thank you.
In the meantime, we're going to go over to Sammy Salina. She has another angle of the shooting that took place this morning to share with us. Sammy?
Yeah, Julie, Chris, this is a widely shared clip on social media, and I just wanted to just let you folks know that we decided to cut all of the audio besides the gunshots, just so we can see exactly what happens. We were showing another angle before, but this one you can see exactly on the other side of the car and where those officers were. Let's take a look. So this is, it appears to be a slowed down version that we're playing first. No, this is regular speed. So the officer goes up, tries to get into that door, and then you can hear the gunshots. We saw from a different angle that vehicle crash into that car over there. That vehicle loses control. And that, of course, that's the driver that everyone is referring to as the woman who was killed.
Sammy, from this angle, it appears that the officer's hit by the car. Watch the officer in front.
So we're gonna now play a slow motion version. Chris, that's kind of zoomed in a little bit. And let's see if we can get to that here. So I'll just let everyone watch.
And the shooter is the third one. You can't see yet. Now
Right,
you see
that's
the
him.
person.
He draws his gun.
She accelerates.
She accelerates.
He fires.
Curves to the right. He fires there. But is he hit? It looks almost like he get hit.
Well, we are going to read a statement from President Trump here in a moment, and the president does say that the officer was hit and is in the hospital currently recovering.
It's just fascinating how we're litigating this 4 hours later right now.
And there will be lots of videos that come out, including federal officers are required now to wear body cameras.
right.
So those ICE agents will also have body camera footage.
And we've certainly heard a lot of statements about what led up to this incident, but that's video that we haven't seen a lot of, is before this happened. So we're trying to track that down too, just to see if we can get more context. We heard officials say that they were trying to get that vehicle, one of their vehicles, out of the snow, and then this is kind of where this all started occurring. So we're trying to get more information about what happened before these moments that you see on your screen now.
All right, thank you so much, Sammy. We appreciate it. And within the last few moments, we did see that Trump posted a statement on Truth Social. If we can call that up for people now, for our viewers. In the statement, he says, "I've just viewed the clip of the event which took place in Minneapolis, Minnesota." By the way, we just want to let you know that was not the clip that Sammy just showed, is our understanding. "It is a horrible thing to watch. The woman screaming was obviously a professional agitator, and the woman driving the car was very disorderly, obstructing and resisting, who then violently, willfully, and viciously ran over the ICE officer, who seems to have shot her in self-defense. Based on the attached clip, it's hard to believe he is alive, but he is now recovering in the hospital. The situation is being studied in its entirety, but the reason these incidents are happening is because the radical left is threatening, assaulting, and targeting our law enforcement officers and ICE agents on a daily basis. They are just trying to do the job of making America safe. We need to stand by and protect our law enforcement officers from this radical left movement of violence and hate." All right, there's going to be a lot of investigation that is underway. We do know that the FBI is on the scene investigating, as well as the BCA. So both federal and state investigations are going on.
Right, and a huge part of that, right, the FBI investigation right now, we have Kyle Loven, who's a former FBI special agent in the District of Minnesota, here on the phone with us. Kyle, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Thank you so much for spending time with us and helping us understand this story a little bit better. Can I first just start with your reaction of what you've seen so far today?
Yes, I've seen what most Minnesotans and Americans have seen, short videos showing an altercation of some type, and then the shooting itself. So not much as far as video evidence other than what's been shown. So again, a lot of facts have to come out here before we have any definitive conclusions.
And what would the role of the FBI be at this point, just 4.5 hours after the incident? We saw FBI agents already out there taking measurements, studying evidence, taking pictures, et cetera, with a hostile crowd around them. What is the role of the FBI right now in investigating what happened?
Well, right now, the FBI's primary focus is to gather the facts, and that includes videos that were taken at the scene, any photographs, witness testimony, any and all factual information they can gather. And then what they'll do is they'll take all of that information, sit down, look at it, piece through it. They'll do some follow-ups if necessary, and really try to put together an accurate picture of what actually occurred here. So that's the primary focus of the FBI. And to simplify it in the simplest terms is to gather the facts of what happened today.
And we know that there is also, the BCA is also on the ground. How do those two agencies work together? or do they?
Yeah, typically when there are multiple agencies, and the FBI has been a part of several joint task forces, this will be no different. They will work together with the BCA. They'll share information, both agencies, and both agencies will work in concert to make certain that all the I's are dotted, all the T's are crossed, and that all the factual information that's gathered by each agency gets shared with each other to make sure that everything is that all parties know exactly what transpired here. So working with state and local agencies and other federal agencies is nothing new for the FBI.
Kyle, this story has been politicized, to say the least, already, right out of the gate. How can you ensure people that the FBI and even the BCA or maybe state prosecutors locally will have a quality investigation that is free from politicization?
Well, I think all agents, whether they be federal, state, or local, took an oath. They took an oath to the Constitution. They didn't take oaths to federal governments, state governments, administrations, and whatnot. They took oaths to the Constitution, be it the federal Constitution, the state Constitution. And so you're dealing with professionals. And when I was in law enforcement, I know that the agents and officers that I worked with took that obligation, that oath, very seriously. And I imagine it's no different now with the current law enforcement personnel that we have. So I have extreme confidence that federal and state authorities will work together, look at the evidence, and come to the right conclusion as far as what occurred here. And I think that's just incumbent upon the officers and the agents who are involved here.
Well, you've been involved in investigations like this before that have a lot of eyeballs, a lot of publicity. What would you like to share with our viewers about how these things unfold and how the information may change as we learn more?
Yeah, the information very well may change because additional information may keep coming through the door. Once the facts are investigated and information is brought in, additional information may come up from time to time, which changes the whole dynamic. So what I would say to the viewers is that this is a fluid situation where facts and circumstances may change, and we have to be willing to follow the facts wherever they go. And so I know that the federal and state officials understand that, and I think they'll do their best to make sure that wherever the facts take them, that's where they're going to go, irrespective of politics.
We know that video is obviously going to play a big role in evidence that's being gathered. Anything else that you could shed some light for us on? What else will agents be doing and looking for pertaining to this case?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, they'll be looking for eyewitness accounts. They'll be looking at they'll be looking for various videos that people may want to share, or they may have to subpoena depending on the situation. They'll be looking for any piece of information they can get their hands on, because this will have to be done in a very thorough, meticulous, and careful manner. And so they're going to leave no stone unturned when it comes to this investigation. So I think if there's anything to take away, I think the viewers should understand that the officers will do a very diligent investigation.
Two quick ones, Kyle. One, how difficult is it to process a scene with a crowd enveloping a scene like that? How difficult is it to process evidence?
Yeah, very difficult when you have a situation where you're not 100% certain of the intentions of everyone in the crowd. So I think to have the state patrol and state authorities come in and help to secure the scene was a good move. It helps to allow the federal officials to properly process the scenes to make sure that they're doing a thorough job. They're not leaving any stone unturned, as it were. So I think that was a good move to make sure that everything's done very thoroughly here. So I think that was very helpful.
All right. Final question for you, just as a former special agent in charge of the FBI locally here, what do you have to say about people's perception of law enforcement? And everybody's out there doing their job right now. There was one person who made a split-second decision, and you see people throwing ice balls and snowballs at the police. We saw what happened years ago when things get out of control. What do you feel, and what would you like to say to people about their treatment of law enforcement in Minnesota right now?
Yeah, I would say that, we have to make sure that the men and women of law enforcement, that they're out there trying to do a job that they signed up to do. There's not a lot of money in it. Oftentimes there's more headache than anything. And I think that we need to give some breathing space to our law enforcement men and women. They're out there trying to do a tough job. It might, you might disagree with them from time to time, and that's fine. That's America. That's what we are. But I think we've got to give them a little space, and to understand too that they're people as well, just like anybody else. They have families, wives, husbands, and maybe give them a break. Maybe they cut them some slack here and there, but just know that they're out there trying to do the job that they signed up for and the job that they're mandated to do. And I think that would go a long way.
Former Special Agent with the FBI, Kyle Loven, appreciate your insight and your perspective on this rough day. Appreciate you.
All right, we want to let you know that, thank you, sir, Secretary of DHS, Kristi Noem, is set to have a press conference at 5 o'clock our time. We will be taking that live. Of course, we will be covering this story from now until 4 o'clock when we have our first newscast of the evening newscast. So stay connected with us online and on social media. We are going to return you to regular programming, but we will be back at 4 o'clock here on KARE 11 with continuing coverage of the ICE agent shooting in Minneapolis this morning. Now back to regular.